I'm Adama Williams. Welcome to Ed Table Talk Unplugged, an Independence Anniversary Special Edition, 50 Years Progressing in Education. This show is a production of the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training. In this edition, we dialogue with former education directors as we get their perspectives on the progress of the Bahamian education system over the past 50 years, while examining their direct contributions and impacts on education. The Bahamas gained independence in 1973, and we knew that we possessed the brilliance, the natural and human resources to thrive and to build a great nation. Paramount to this objective was the need to expand access to education. This was the passport to a sustainable future for all Bahamians. So today we will dialogue with former Director of Education. She would have been a part of the post-independence education system in its early years. We're happy to welcome former Education Director, Mrs. Iris Pinder. Mrs. Pinder, it's so good to have you with us. I know you've served from 1997 to 2007, which is a 10-year stint. It's so good to have you join this conversation today.
Good to be here.
Great. And let's just get right into it. Now, the role of director was tremendous, and I'm sure you would have had a rewarding experience, fulfilling experience, and one that took a lot of effort and strategy. When you assumed the role of director, what was number one on your agenda?
To improve student achievement.
That was it.
Of course, but you needed to do other things to get to that. So
exactly.
That was my number one.
Give us a bit about what strategies you used, because I know student agenda, that was your agenda to heighten their achievement, but I'm sure there was a roadmap to get there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would think that Manifesto 92, as well as the Bethel Report, and of course the Bethel Report would have canvassed all of the islands, meeting with educators, parents, even students. And so the recommendations served as a roadmap for me. And in those meetings, you would have heard about classrooms overcrowded.
Yes, that's been a problem.
There were teachers in the classrooms. Some were trained, some were untrained, some were classified as assistant teachers. Then we had curriculum matters to look at. And of course, in the Family Islands especially, the multi-grade teaching, where you had one teacher having to deal with 3 grade levels.
Right.
And of course, in each of those grade levels, you had varying abilities. And then the Education Act, that was also for tutors, having just been passed. Not passed, but renewed in 1996. And so then we had the system now. There was also changes within the system, for you had preschool added.
Right.
You had the change of the comprehensive to now the junior and senior high schools. And then you also had emphasis that should be placed on students with disabilities.
Right.
So all of those areas that we had to look at.
Right, and we know that our Constitution stated that we are to provide an equitable education and equal education for all.
Absolutely.
All. Exactly. Now, in her book, Roses to Mount Fitzwilliam, Dame Ivy, former education minister, she described you. You must be really special for her to write a book and think about you. But she described you as a highly organized person and a forceful personality. She went on to say that Mrs. Pinder's intimate knowledge of the whole school system provided invaluable information as we sought to improve the quality and quantity of classrooms and of teaching personnel. During your tenure as director, do you personally feel that you matched this description?
Well, let me say that I did my best. And To hear Dame Ivy describe me in such a way would say that at least she valued my contribution. And also I'd like to say that she was a mentor for me, as a deputy director. In meetings, I learned a whole lot just watching how she conducted those meetings. Always prepared. And so when I became director, I definitely used some of those tips when I had to deal with meetings. Well, I've always been forthright. I believe in calling a spade a spade. I think you seem to, getting from some individuals probably think that you're a bit harsh or too direct. But I think it is always in your best interest and in the system's best interest, okay, to be honest in your assessment.
Right. And
also looking at what needs to be done, especially I mentioned earlier, to improve student achievement.
Yes.
Because schools, they're there for children.
Exactly.
And I always remember Dame saying to us in meetings that every decision that you make, you should think how what you are intending to do would affect or impact in a positive way the students in the schools.
That is powerful.
And I always remember that in my decision making.
Because every decision counted. Every decision still impacts who we are today. And so Dame Ivy also noted in her book that there were clear signs of progress during her tenure, referencing a number of major programs and initiatives that were carried out. Of course, she would have been supported initially by former director Zelma Dean. She followed, which I think you followed her as the director. What were some of those initiatives? We can start. I know we don't have enough time to finish in this segment, but give us a glimpse of what were some of those initiatives that Dame Ivy alluded to.
Well, I think, first of all, before I get into them, I need to say that the Department of Education was decentralized. And when the department was decentralized, we had our own budget. And of course, we had to then come up with an organizational structure, because on one arm with the schools, you had curriculum and you had management. Those were two divisions. And then we had sections, because under, for instance, curriculum, you would have had humanities, you had science with math, then you had technical vocational education, you had special education, and you had learning resources, okay? And so, and then of course, as I indicated earlier when I talked about the challenges, which probably mitigated against improved student achievement, we had to look at those. And so during that time, there was a definite shift in the population here in New Providence to the south. And so the government was prepared to listen to our recommendations with respect for needing more classroom space, which really required building new schools. Yeah. And so during that period, we had, like, for instance, primary schools, Gerald Cash, Garvin Tynes, Cleveland Aeneas, Sadie Curtis, just here in New Providence that I could recall. And two high schools, we had C.V. Bethel, and we had extensions at some of the schools. And so, you had more classrooms, so we needed more teachers for smaller classes. And then, of course, the government agreed when we prepared our cabinet papers, or proposed for cabinet papers and send them off. And so we had, the whole system was changed. Right. Okay, we had no longer the comprehensive.
We want to hear some more about those changes.
Okay.
Right after the break. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to continue this interesting conversation. We're going to hear a little bit about our former director, Iris Pinder's journey during her tenure when we return.
Education and learning are so very important. This is why schools should always be a safe place. Many say that being picked on or teased is just a part of growing up, that everyone goes through it and it is no big deal, and you should just toughen up. Yes, many people were picked on and made fun of, but that does not make it right or okay. Bullying is behavior that is purposely intended to hurt, embarrass, or exclude someone, and can be physical harm, verbal abuse, or public social rejection. As an advocate for all students, I want you to know that you have the power to take a stand and stamp out bullying in our schools. Parents, if your child reports being bullied, reach out to the school to ensure positive resolutions. If you are being bullied or know about bullying, I am asking you, begging you to help your school counselors to decrease the incidences of bullying on our campuses. Working together, we can put an end to this. We want all of our students in school, so let's keep it safe.
Hi, my name is Kanai Davis. I'm a 9th grade student at SEO5 in junior high school. I'm not a straight A student, but I will not give up on my goal of obtaining my high school diploma and graduating in the next few years. And you shouldn't either. Your dreams matter, your goals matter, and getting a good education will make that possible. Always remember, the race is not for the swift, but those who endure to the end, stay in school, and always put your best foot forward.
Welcome back to Ed Table Talk Unplugged. For those of you just joining us, our topic is 50 years progressing in education. An interesting discussion thus far with former director Iris Pinder, who would have served from 1997 to 2007 as education director. Mrs. Pinder, before the break, we were talking about those strategies that Dame Ivy alluded to in her book, where she said that you worked on the improvement and the quality and quantity of education. Continue with that.
Well, let's look at the classrooms first. We amalgamated many of the schools in the Family Islands, the small schools.
Give me some examples.
Let me just look at my island and Long Island. We closed Roses and Mortimer's, and those students would have come into Morrisville.
Okay.
And then there were schools in the north, same thing happened. And in doing that, then we were able to at least have a teacher per grade or two, for the most part, not more than teaching more than 2 grades, which was a marked improvement. Right. That's one strategy we used. And when we did that as well, we were able to also provide specialist teachers that the islands never had, like, for instance, Spanish. And they would have served, for instance, like the Spanish teacher in the Deadman's Key area would have served at Mangrove Bush Primary as well as Lower Deadman's Key Primary. Okay. And also would have gone to Morrisville. So we were able to do that as well as physical education that never happened before. Mm. And also, like, for instance, like a reading coordinator who would have moved from school to school to school. Here in New Providence, we looked at, for instance, the magnet programs, where we had, for instance, like the government high, where they had the performing arts.
That's still present.
That's still going on.
Still going on. Mm-hmm.
And then we looked at, for instance, R.M. Bailey and C.C. Sweeney was more like technical. Okay. And of course, we would have been able to do that because we had experienced that in Grand Bahama. That would have been pre-96, 97, because we had technical and vocational programs there at Hawksbill High and 8 Mile Rock High for many years. And we found that the students who did the technical programs, mm-hmm. they had the skills to be employed. Wow. Just as they graduated. Okay.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm.
And then in here also we had, for instance, we always had the texts that came from abroad. Mm-hmm. And so we had indigenous text. For instance, at the writing unit, at the learning resources, they came up with a language arts text where, okay, she could have a story like Mail Boat Day in the Family Islands. The children can relate to those.
Right.
And so it was easier then to teach other skills because using the literature that the children could relate to. Then we also looked at, for instance, the school boards. Because, at the time when it rained and you had problems with the toilets, you had to dismiss the school early, so.
School boards are still a big thing today.
Absolutely,
Yes.
and so they came in and they had certain, responsibilities, and so that was an area. And then we also, for instance, looked at, as I indicated, the Spanish before and other subjects which were not before in the primary section, so you had
Right.
the curriculum, offices being very busy, writing the curriculum, and then also looking at reforming certain subject areas, because I think the last reform would have been in 82,
Okay.
that we had looked at curriculum, and so we did a lot of that. Now, however, like as you indicated, we could only do these things after we would have gotten, because we implement the policy, but of course, cabinet make policy.
Right.
So we had to look at the system as a whole and ask or request additional teachers. Because remember, I mentioned the classrooms, the additional classrooms, we were able
Right.
to now. Then the policy was made for instance, in preschools, you had students, the classroom should not exceed 20 students.
Whew.
And then, of course, in
Now,
grades 1 to,
Tell me something.
that is the truth.
Okay, that is the truth, but did that actually pan out?
Yes, it did.
It did?
At that time.
Wow.
And then
Okay.
in grades 1 to 3, you had 25 students, and 4 to 6 would have been 30.
Okay.
And so the teachers had, manageable classes. And also, remember, I'd mentioned the children with disabilities. Okay,
Right.
so we had inclusion in some of our schools where there were units in there for the deaf. I could remember SC McPherson with deaf students, and they did BJCs and things of
That's
that nature.
excellent.
And then we also had at the Garvin Times, that's where our first autistic unit was placed.
I recall.
That. And so, need I go on? We had.
I want to get into
And then
some other areas,
okay,
but
so-
we get the picture.
But another point I want to say is this, that we had to really look at where the system was, where we
Yes.
wanted to go, and what we needed to get, okay, with
Exactly.
respect to funding and so on. And one thing I want to mention as well, I know when I became director, we always had orientation for new teachers, but it was nothing for administrators. And I remember when I became a principal, I mean, you just
Went in, like,
yeah,
just
but
thrown in
anyway,
to
so
see.
we implemented also a 2-day session to deal with leadership and management.
Oh, that came under your tenure.
Yeah, we start. No. That's not the. You're talking about the IEL program. During my tenure, we were in negotiations with College of Bahamas.
Okay.
For the IEL program, but that did not. That was not implemented, I think, until 2008 or 2009, and I had left in 2007.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap up, and we're probably going to continue this in the next segment. But there was an education task force established and led by Dr. Keva Bethel, the late Dr. Keva Bethel. And this was perhaps prior to your appointment as director. But this task force made special recommendations and improvements for education. From your recollection, were those recommendations carried out?
Those are what
Those are what you
I was just mentioning.
what you would have alluded to already.
Right.
Right. And do you feel, for the most part, the outcomes were met?
I think we saw success in some areas. I cannot tell you that I was pleased every year when I looked at the BGCSE results, but there were, year by year, you saw incremental improvements. I think what was more beneficial, what I found more would have been, especially the family islands, they were, let me say this, okay. I felt at times when I was out there that it was like two systems.
Right.
And for instance, I recall when I came in first, the directors' meeting would have been only for the individuals here in New Providence. And I asked the question, well, New Providence doesn't make the Bahamas.
True.
So we agitated, and Dame we got permission to bring in the district superintendents, because you remember now during the Bethel's report had recommended that we have the 13 districts, and so we had to have the 4, which would have been implemented during, I wouldn't remember whether it was between Mrs. Dean or myself, because I was deputy director, and being the deputy director for management, that would have come under my portfolio. So I had responsibility for like sitting down and doing the job description with, of course, those who were in place. They were called then education officers.
Right.
But we had the 4 districts here in New Providence. And so we then had the directors meeting monthly, included all of the district superintendents from across the Bahamas who came in, and they also would have brought ideas to like New Providence, and likewise they could get ideas from the district superintendents. So it was something very, very positive.
Exactly. All right, and we're going to continue this, and we'll wrap up after the break. Hopefully get some more, a little bit more about that and about your personal journey and your impact. When we return, we will see you right after this break.
Hi, I'm Dyson Knight. Yo! Schools are open. It's been a year, and still some of our students have not returned to class. Teachers, we are appealing to you to use that innovation, that extraordinary effort that you used during the pandemic to make sure that our children continue their education. Take to Twitter, Facebook, Discord, whatever platform you believe necessary in order to find our students. Be the beacon of light that attracts these children to you so that you can instill the confidence in them that they need in life to succeed. I'm counting on you. The Bahamas needs you. Let's find every child.
Welcome back. We are here chatting with our former Director of Education, Iris Pinder. She served from 1997 to 2007, a stint of 10 years, and she's telling us all about the impact that she would have made, she along with her team at the Ministry of Education at the time. Now, Mrs. Pinder, let's further this conversation and hopefully conclude on a strong note. Now, pundits throughout the education system often remark that our education system is based on a one-size-fits-all model. More specifically, it's often said that we don't cater to students. Now, you alluded to this already. We don't cater to students who are gifted in technical and vocational areas. And as you can see now, the ministry is focused, it's pumped up its focus on technical areas and vocational studies. Rather, persons are saying it puts all students into that one academic box. For some time now, there's been a call for a more diverse system of education. So, are we now moving into the right direction? What are your thoughts on this?
I'm a proponent of technical and vocational education because, as I indicated earlier, I saw the benefits at Hawksville High as well as 8 Mile Rock High. And as I also mentioned earlier, the technical vocation at R.M. Bailey. So I don't necessarily agree wholeheartedly with what you read there, because I think efforts have been made. The challenge I found as director was really to change the mindset of some of our leaders, because some of the principals felt that because the student was quote-unquote bright, that child should not be channeled into a technical vocational education. And I had that when I was principal of 8 Mile Rock, because I remember the head boy in '92 being a technical vocational student because but they didn't want him to go into that program. They wanted him to go into academic science or the academic arts.
Where does this mentality
the
come
mentality,
from?
yeah. And so you have that across, in some principles, they discourage it, which is unfortunate, okay?
Do you know a plumber makes more than I do?
Of course, that's the point I was about to make. I mean, the students with skills, they do better than those of us with the professional, the quote-unquote professionals, okay? So, I mean, as a principal, I encouraged it. And as director, I did the same with respect to getting, requesting, or recommending that you have expansion of workshops, especially in some of the family islands. And because I could think of, for instance, during my tenure, you had Long Island, you had Ixjuma, you had Abaco, Andros, and some of those workshops we had like just not for just one skill. I don't recall the name that we gave it at the time, but the workshop was able to accommodate like 3 different skills, the big enough and so on. So you got, and even now I decry right in Long Island where I had encouraged the NGM to implement, like for instance, like motor skills, you know, where like you have all these fishermen and so on, you know.
Yes.
Small engine repairs is the term that we normally use, and others. But, well, of course, that is an area where we have not seen much in that. The only thing there's home economics. So it depends on the leadership, those who, for instance, how it started and all, for instance, in Grand Bahama. You know, it all depends on your bent and if you see the need for it, because not every child will come out with 6 or 7 BGCSEs with grade A, B, and C, but many children have other skills.
Right. You know what I'm observing from our conversation and previous conversations, that these ideas, what we're hearing now, are not necessarily new ideas. It's just a matter of execution and following through with the ideas. And now we're going to have to wrap up very shortly. I want to hear what your greatest challenge was. Now, we heard some challenges, but what would you say is the greatest challenge you've encountered?
I think the greatest challenge was really funding. Because I could say that the team that we had, we were on the same page, and so we got a lot done. But I think that I sometimes smile now when I hear that, you know, every administration talks about they're beginning this and beginning that, like, for instance, computerization. I recall going to Manchester, and I've called with my deputy director going to New York and Florida and Canada. But we just didn't have the funds to do what we wanted to do. So it you know, was slow. But it's a true saying, what has been will be again. But I think, looking back, I'm proud of, I think, our accomplishments. And I had, as I indicated, Dame Ivy as the minister first, and who really I looked to for guidance in some respects. And I had a good team. I had with well, I started with Mrs. Garraway, and then I had Lenore Archer, who were very, very solid in the curriculum area, and some very good superintendents, and of course, and officers, who now I look at the new director now in place, Dominique, who I remember being in a program with me, and when I was doing the IEL program, because I did the leadership and management course, or module rather,
Okay, so teamwork makes the, can we finish?
The dream work. Right,
teamwork makes the dream work. Now
I'm not as young as you are.
You're kidding.
I'm going to remember all of those things.
So do you feel confident that your work that you would have done as your time during your tenure as director would have measured up or would have sufficiently supported the vision and mission of the Ministry of Education?
Oh, I think so.
So that's a yes?
That's a yes.
All right. And on that note, I thank you for your contributions, because like we said earlier, the role of director is not an easy one. I don't see how you and your colleagues would have done it. But hats off to you. Thank you. As we celebrate our 50th anniversary, we salute persons such as you and your teams. Thank you for, like I said, joining this conversation today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And it has certainly been a pleasure and a treat to dialogue, like I said, with our former education director on her views on the progress we've made in education post-independence. As stakeholders in education, we must continue to work in unison to carry out the ministry's mission to ensure that all persons in the Bahamas are provided an opportunity to receive a quality and equitable education that will equip them with the necessary beliefs, knowledge, attitudes, and skills required for life, both in a democratic society guided by Christian values and in an interdependent changing world. And for our viewers, if you would like to receive frequent updates on what's happening in the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training, subscribe to 819 BMOE, that's 819-2663. Visit our website or follow us on Facebook, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and other social media platforms. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Ajama Williams.